Ladies and gentlemen, it's finally working. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 54 of the Tait Talks podcast. Today I'm speaking to Hannah Sainty, who is a podcaster, writer, artist. What else have we got on here? Comedian, and, well, what have I left out?
Actor,
that's the one. It's literally the first thing written on it. What a great start. A broken back, and also technical difficulties, and forgetting the accolades that my guest has.
Oh, don't worry, there's not even an accolade, don't even worry.
There's too many of them. You can just add some extra ones to make you feel better. Philanthropist, if that's good.
I always make the joke that, like, I'm also all those things, but also, like, a scuba diver, was a yoga teacher, a massage therapist, and I've studied, like, animal flow fitness, and I'm just like, I clearly just hate money.
Yeah, sure. Wait, what is it? Hang on, what is an animal flow?
It's like, it's just like this hectic fitness regime of, like, primal movement, but it's like extra primal.
I thought you did exercise for animals.
No, that would be cooler.
Yeah.
That'd be so much cooler.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe I'll do that.
Yeah. Well, you're
Next
really
on my list.
Well, unless it's for, like, celebrities and you can really get some of that sweet big cash.
Train in those 2 hours.
Yeah. As you said, you've got many strings to your bow.
Yeah.
You've brought out the podcast, You're Weird.
I have, yeah.
Was that this year, yeah?
Yeah, it was in January this year.
Yeah, sweet. Tell us about that.
It's a really exciting project, actually. I started it off as a blog a few years ago, just as blogs were going out of fashion.
Nice, yeah.
And then I kind of gave it up, but the idea was still knocking around all the time, because a lot of people always talk to me about creativity and you know, how to move past, like, the resistances and, you know, like, how to get the confidence to share the work. Because, like, my creative journey was full of, it's like a comedy of errors, basically.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's like everything I tried to do, I was just butting heads against the universe, and it was just like, not now. And then I kind of gave it all up and got really depressed and was like, I think I have to go be creative again.
Okay, yeah.
And I sort of recognized, you know, through, like, talking to just, like, general people as well, like, if they were sort of, like, feeling down on their luck or hating their job, I'm like, they didn't really have like a release, like a reason to play and just have fun and relax. And I was writing an article for a magazine, like, based upon the psychology of play, like, because we forget about it as adults, because you're like, that's designated for children and children alone.
Yes, yeah, you just sort of do things as an adult.
Exactly. And you just got to kind of get the job done. You know, it's adult, you've got responsibilities, but in order to do any of those responsibilities and have, like, an independent thought or to educate your children, you also still have to have a communication with your imagination.
It's true, yeah.
And then to be a better problem solver, which is creativity, you need to be able to play.
Yes.
And I know I had lost the ability to do that and I had to rediscover it. And once I did, I started to feel a lot better, and I was always talking to people and sharing my experiences. And then I just noticed that I was having a lot of people come to me and ask me for creative advice. And, you know, it's not as though I have huge accolades or anything, but it's like I'm really, really dedicated to the cause. Yeah. And so I thought, well, if I'm talking about this all the time, I might as well just give it to the public.
Yes, yeah.
And that's what I did. I even had, like, a friend message me the other day, ask me for creative advice, and I did. And then I said, also, I don't want to self-promote, but, like, episode 4, like, literally talks about that. So
on my well-acclaimed podcast.
On my acclaimed
podcast. Yeah, that's cool. But so, all right, do you have anything that you would like to say on the topic of, like, how do you get your playback, if that makes sense?
Well, the first thing to know is that to find your sense of play is going to be really different for every kind of person. We've all got different kinds of psychology. So for some people, like, the sense of play will come from, like, you know, running and screaming through a field, just, like, letting your lungs, like, literally acting like a child discovering your voice for the first time. You're just, like, free. For another person, you need to, like, oppose it, and you might teach you just get a pen and a pad and to just move and, like, move with the free flow. You might want to go and do a dance class, there's contemporary dance or hip hop. It depends on, like, the energy.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I always think that, like, if you're a bit, like, if you're pent up and you're anxious and whatever, you got to kind of, like, the first thing is you got to expand your body inside.
Relax.
Yeah. And it sounds so tacky and so cliche, but I think that cliches are, you know, popular for a reason. It's because they work. And, like,
done and dusted. Yeah.
Exactly. So journal. Doesn't matter if it's words or if it's drawing. Just get something out. You got to get it out of your head.
Venting.
Yeah. Vent into, like, record it on your phone. I've done that before. Like, I was, like, in such a mood. I was like, I got to get it out. And then I started, like, venting, talking. And then I started singing it. And I was like, all right. And then by the end, I was like, oh, all right, I'm good. Let's keep going. And I was like, lucky no one saw that. Like,
Until they're released. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just have a small snippet at the end of a podcast. Like, this is me.
This is me.
Yeah, that's sweet. So you started doing the podcast. Is there anything that sort of jumped out to you that you've realised it's harder than you thought doing a podcast?
Time.
Just
time. Like, you want to make a good product, so you got to dedicate your time to it. And when, you've got, it's not my full-time job to be a podcaster, so trying to, like, squeeze that in and give the appropriate time and energy that it needs, finding that time can be sort of difficult.
Yeah.
But, and then I suppose sometimes just finding, like, ways to be articulate in the topic that you're trying to discuss. And sometimes the topics are difficult. Like, like the reason why I called it You're Weird is because as a teenager I used to get called weird. But it was just because I had, like, independent thoughts.
Yes, you just...
And I was quirky and I was making weird, interesting stuff. But that's what made me stand out. And then in terms of marketing, that's your unique selling point. You know what I mean? So whether or not, like, you're trying to become creative or you're trying to take that next step, you're going to kind of lean into that uniqueness of you, which is the weird part. And weird has such a negative connotation to it. And so sometimes, like, when talking about those topics, I find just trying to, like, be articulate, whether or not it's about, like, the psychology of how people are perceiving you, or maybe, like, the resistance that you're trying to overcome, just, like, being delicate and but I try and make sure that I'm talking to all sorts of people, like, even discussing overcoming perfectionism. Like, I'm quite a stoic person, so I will just jump in, you know what I mean? I'll jump in the deep end, sink or swim, let's go. But that doesn't work for everyone. Some people have to be gentler about it, and that's okay. So I try and cater.
Dip a toe in, see how it is.
Exactly, yeah.
So do you have any, like, goals that you set out for the podcast?
Yes, mainly I really would like to... I've got key, guests that I would like to interview. That's one of them. And I'd really like to, at some point, have it just as, like, a bit of a bigger platform to be discussing art and creativity, because it's so powerful, especially in, like, the face of, like, artificial intelligence and those sorts of things.
Yes.
Imagination is the key point that we need to really focus on.
Yeah.
And so I'd really like to create a better platform, maybe turn it into more of the vodcast instead of the podcast. Get more video.
Yes, yeah. It's like artificial intelligence. Obviously, we discussed, like, acting, podcasting, drawing, or artists and stuff like that. That there is a lot of AI can do now.
So much.
Yeah, so, like, you were saying about not making money, like, it's just like, damn robots. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, like, and obviously, like, writing as well, like, being a big part. We'll get into a bit more, but it's one of those ones that is a little bit scary. For you've built up all this, like, I don't know, repertoire of great unique skills, and all of a sudden there's this thing that can do them and is getting better and better and better at doing it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Do you, like, obviously, like you said that you've done, well, we do writing.
Yep.
So is that something you do think about?
Loads.
Yeah.
The day that ChatGPT came out, I had, like, a mental breakdown. I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
What's the point of me anymore?
Yeah, I assume for a lot of people. Like, I use, from when this podcast started to where it is now, I use apps, like, just to do the posters and stuff like that. And how much easier things are to do now from 2020 to now, and how quick they are and easy, and how much better they look. I'm not saying my shit's fantastic, but it's better than day one.
Yep.
And I'm like, holy shit. Like, I remember only a few years ago having to get, like, a graphic designer to do some comedy posters for me, and that being like, yeah, it's $250, and I'm like, yeah, sweet, it's a good deal. And now it's just like beep boop boop on my phone, and I've made it.
I know.
Yeah, it must be such a daunting thing for sort of... I don't really have anything for myself that... I don't think comedy can really get taken over by it, because you need humans to do it.
Correct.
That's right, fuck you, robot. As my computer turns off. But the like, obviously with writing and, like, obviously you do art, like, that must be... There's many things that are trying to take from you.
Oh, absolutely. Like, literally when ChatGPT came out, I was like, if this thing is now taking over, because, you know, my ultimate goal is to be writing and performing like my own works, and then having my podcast support it and come along with me along the journey, inspire other people to be creative, because all of our jobs are getting stolen.
Yeah,
you know, so
crazy,
I'm like, okay. And so when it came out though, I was like, okay, so like I've just kind of got consistent clients with the writing and everything now that I've worked so hard to get. And then I had one client literally say that like they didn't give me the job, and they went to ChatGPT, and then they kind of came back to me like, yeah, they didn't do it really well, can you fix it? And I was like, now I'm getting ChatGPT sloppy seconds?
Yeah.
What do you mean? And I was like, also, I will do it, but secondly, it's going to learn how I did it. Like,
oh yeah, it's always learning.
It's always learning. And so I had all these like mental breakdowns over it, but then I was like, to be fair, like I've kind of noticed in the way that I've been noticing how I'm using AI in my fields of work as well.
Yeah.
And the jobs that now I've taken away from the people that I used to hire.
Yeah.
It doesn't really, I've noticed like my own thinking on it, and then interpreted the way that, you know, like my friend who's an editor in that, and it's like thinking about how they are now perceiving they're going to use AI in their world. So for me in writing, I'm using it to like make my output faster and more efficient.
Yeah.
As
it's just
well
a tool.
It's a tool, yeah. And I listened to a podcast with someone interviewing like a really famous copywriter. And this copywriter said he's not afraid of AI because it's like having an assistant with you who's just doing all of like the boring admin, like bottom feeder parts of your job.
Yes.
And you get to take those parts and then just make it beautiful.
Yeah, okay.
And I was like, that's a really good point. And he said, because, you know, like with any assistant, you can't really trust what they're doing straight off the bat. Like they don't know the context, they don't really understand, they don't have the years of work into like that specific client, so they can help, but you still have to do the work. So if anything, it's just a tool to make you do better. And I thought, okay, this might be my way of just surviving the next phase of life, but I'm gonna go with that.
Yeah. I suppose as you're right, like I didn't really think of it like as a tool like that. I always thought it would just take the job, you know what I mean? But as you said, like the technology's not there yet.
I mean, it probably will be like by the time we finish this podcast.
Yeah,
but, like,
You know. It's just a Tait talks out. It's like, what the fuck? That is cool though. Like I suppose you adapt to everything. Like I'm sure at one point, people that used to make hammers, right, as a business, I'm sure it was huge for a bit, and then something else came out, they're like, oh no, we got drills now. They're like, what? Yeah, an electric drill could do your job. Like we don't need hammers anymore.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's just
I thought about
yeah, true.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I thought about it like with like robots stealing jobs. Think about when you go 10-pin bowling, there used to be guys that would go up and put all your pins up.
Yeah.
I reckon that was like the first job that was stolen.
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah, that's true, yeah. And string got invented, it was just like looped around. I suppose we'll have to just wait and see. But as you were saying, though, that you do still have to give it the human touch.
Definitely. So, like, just as a test, I was like, writing press releases, for example, writing that for artists, their shows, and those sorts of things. It's a very particular format. And it's a particular style of language that's used.
Yes.
And so, people might think that they've written a press release, but they've just written an article.
I was going to say, can you give us a breakdown of what a press release is? Because I actually don't know.
There you go. Okay, so a press release is it is basically an information document that should be no longer than one page that is sent to media outlets to be the primer to get you an interview. So then to get promotion through the media for whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
And so then it's got to, and because it's for journalists read a lot of things all the time. They also don't have heaps of time to read all the stuff. So they're looking for key pieces of information.
Yeah.
To then figure out whether or not it's worth reading the whole thing and if it's worth contacting you to pursue it any further. Okay. So then the format has to be very specific, like a specific trickle of information.
Yeah, so you have to have a poster for a, say, comedy show. You're going to have the time, where it is,
exactly
cost,
like that.
Blah, 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 acts. So it's just like you can look at it and be like, oh yes, relevant information, I'll go. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then you have to do that. And I just as a test, I put it into ChatGPT to see what it would be like, because I was like, oh god, if it does it better than me, I am gonna eat so much ice cream.
Yeah.
And I had a look, and I was like, your format's all wrong, bro.
Yeah.
Wrong. I'm still better. And then I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna capitalize on me being better at it, but it's giving me the forethought to keep thinking and being really aware of what I'm doing, of like, what do I actually want from my future?
Yeah.
And how can I work towards that now? Because, you know, the stuff that I'm doing with the writing, if it's not for me, it's just supporting what I'm trying to do, right? So that's the supportive job for the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
So I can't put all of my energy into that, which means you have to put all of your energy into your actual goal and have the foresight of how am I going to make that financially stable?
Yes.
And how can I do it faster before the robot steals my support job?
Yeah. Goddamn robots. Everything. They're coming after everything. Support jobs now. Yeah, it sucks. But I mean, as you said, if you can use it to benefit yourself and drive yourself and to get to the next level of where you want to be.
And I think in part it will have to level out just a little bit, because at the end of the day we're animals, really.
Yeah.
And we like to be connected to people. Like, you know, everything that happened with COVID and lockdowns, that people were just like, oh my god, I miss physical touch and seeing someone.
Yeah.
Whereas before that, we kind of forgot about it. We're so busy.
Yeah, true.
And in the same token, like, you're like, yeah, cool, I can use the robots for everything. But I genuinely really like working with another artist who has their skill set. And so it doesn't mean I would never be hiring them for the job, but I'm going to give them a better job, because I'm like, oh, don't do the shit one. I'll just do that. And then we can work together and come up with a new idea, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, you know, I'm positive about these things.
Yeah.
I already had the downer moments, so.
Yeah. True, the ice cream's not yet. So how did you get into writing though?
It's to be honest, I've never not been writing. Like, I got my first works published when I was like in primary school, like writing poems and stuff. Yeah. It was
so you were
always done it. And then I started writing. I went to uni and I was writing scripts. And then while I was doing that, I started working in public relations. So that's when I started learning about writing press releases for media and that.
Yeah.
And so the way that I got into it is just literally putting myself through the mill of learning and pushing. And like, I used to send things off just to get feedback, be like, am I in the right vein of this writing? Mm-hmm. And from there, I just sort of built up a network. I was like, okay, I want to do a bit of copywriting. I think I can do it in these ways. Created my own portfolio of work. Mm-hmm. Some of them were for actual clients, just like people I knew, and then others were just stuff I made up. It was like, you know, like a spec. This is what I could do. And then started putting it out and started getting clients, and then just kept running with it.
So are you freelance?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So is that what you're doing currently?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, right now, currently, I'm freelance writing as well as doing a contract at Melbourne University.
Okay.
In media and comms. Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Do you reckon you would like to go down the route of like writing a book or anything like that? Is that the...
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay.
I've got like 4 chapters of a novel.
Yes, yeah.
Already done. That won't come out for a very long time.
Yeah.
But I reckon, like, by the time I retire, I'll probably just, like, be hanging out, still doing some comedy of some description, and writing romance novels. Like,
yeah.
I don't
That's
know
where
why.
it goes, yeah.
Right? Like, that's what they're all
I just
reading.
don't think the robots will really get the romance good, yeah.
They couldn't get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that soft touch.
Yeah, and it's got to be, like, human, like, undertones as well.
Exactly.
I guess. It'd be like, I rubbed his metal back. And you're like, what the fuck? Yeah.
I just think it'd be fun and funny. Probably by the time I'm older, I won't care about it. But I don't know if you've ever looked at a Mills and Boon, but it's funny.
No.
Like, the language is so hectic. Like,
it's a romance novel?
Yeah, they've got all like these degrees as well, like of like how saucy it will be. Like the first one is like sweet, and then it goes all the way up to like red hot, like 50 Shades of Grey style. It's really funny.
Which are you on the colour scheme?
No, none of them. I just like reading them, and I will read them. Like Jared and I were reading them out to each other because we're just like, this language is hilarious. Like using the wildest words. Like we had to Google a word, never heard of it. I can't remember what it is right now, but looked it up and it just meant bored.
Oh,
I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah,
who's reading this?
That's an author just flexing their muscles.
Yeah, definitely.
There's some crazy stuff if the robots start writing them, like real long thesaurus with some sex in there. Yeah, I mean, I've thought about like writing for like, you know, trying to write for like comedy, like, you know, like...
Yeah.
But I just suck. Like I'm so bad at the actual like grammar and shit, and I know I'm horrible at it because I've been editing my like clips, like, and it's the captions, and it automatically does it, and I'm like, what word is that? I don't even know. Like I'm googling simple shit, and so it's always amazed me that people can see like a thing of writing and be like, I can make this perfect. So like, as a human would say it, like the pauses, full stop, exclamation point, blah blah blah, question mark. I'm just like, does a question mark go there? Like, how do you like? Is it just all in your brain that you know grammar so well now, or is there tricks of the trade and there is computer programs? I know there is like obviously autocorrect and stuff like that, but it still doesn't. Like I use Word for stuff, and that doesn't give me shit.
Oh, Word's terrible for anything like that. I mean, and to be fair, like to be a writer doesn't mean you're still not a one-man band.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
Like you will still have like an editor who's going to go through and check your grammar because.
Oh really?
Yeah, things like so when I've written for magazines and stuff, it still has to go to an editor, and then they'll come back and be like, oh, you did this, and I'm like, of course, because sometimes you're so far in it, you don't notice like the small mistake that you've made.
Yeah.
Which might might be a tone or an angle that's just changed, but you're just so in it and you've reread it, and because you're still living in it.
Yes.
It's like when you start saying a word too many times, it stops making sense. Like you need someone to come in.
Yeah.
So you still have an editor. That's why when anybody writes a book, they've got an editor that will come in and check their work and fix it and upscale it. So it's still a team effort. Like there's not
I need
really
a team, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need a team. But I don't think there's any craft that when you really look at it doesn't have a team. Even to do comedy, you're writing the jokes and stuff, but it's the team that are putting the space together. You know what I mean? There's still there's going to be a team element.
Yeah.
You could do it all yourself, and you could probably do fine at it. But if you have a team that makes the work easier, which means that the performance is going to be better.
Yeah, true. And as you were saying, like working with an artist or another human, that you can bounce those ideas off each other and get inspired, and they can give you different angles, obviously in comedy and stuff like that. That it is something that you're like, this is my way of thinking, and then you go and someone goes, why didn't you just say it like that? And you're like, oh,
why didn't I think of that? Yeah.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so strange.
It's really strange.
And
I think
it's in front of you. It's just like, that was such a logical thing.
Right.
And then your brain's like, nah, you're not having this today. Yeah, go down this weird word, this bored word, whatever it was.
I wish I could remember that. But, well, and that's it. And so, like, when I'm writing, like, I always write just to myself first. Like, I want the free flow of thought. And, I mean, everybody has skills in a different area. Like, I can do words, I can't do maths.
Yeah.
Some people are really great at public speaking. Other people are just really great at cooking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I can make food, but I can't make a meal.
Yeah,
you know
true.
what I mean?
Like,
There's a big
I wouldn't
difference.
cook for other people.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would scare me. That would scare me more than doing stand-up. That's so strange, isn't it?
It is overwhelming. It
Yeah.
is. I've done it for people before. If I have to do it for anyone important, that really freaks me out. Like, first time cooking for your partner's parents or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm sweaty. I can't.
Yeah, we're getting pizza. Cooking's not my thing, but you are right. Like, people just have their strengths.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, like, I mean, I think that's the beautiful thing about human beings. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so thankful for accountants. I hate that job much.
True.
You know what I mean? But it's not, a lot of accountants love numbers. Like, they love the format. And it's, for me, like, I love writing, like, essays. Oh, I used to froth writing an essay.
Yeah.
Because I love the format. I like the way it goes together. I like the context, or like the argument you're posing, or the opposing arguments. I really enjoy every facet of it. And so for me, when I'm writing, I imagine it's the same way as someone who writes music, where they can hear it.
Yeah.
To me, I can hear sort of like the tone. I can hear where a comma needs to be, or a pause, which is the same way that I write comedy. It's like I can hear it, that there is a punchline. Sometimes when I'm writing comedy, I don't even have the punchline. I just put an underline because I'm like, that is going to be funny, whatever that is. I don't know what it is right now, but it will be funny.
Yeah. I wish it's funny.
Come on.
Yeah.
But it's like, I can hear it, you know what I mean? So it's like when you're listening to someone speak and you're like, Jesus, I wish they would take a breath. But it's because you want that breath to happen so you can listen to their thought and then kind of give something back to them. And you just kind of notice it. But that's how I write.
I think it's like, obviously you said you're creative. Like, whereas people who love numbers and stuff like that, usually there is a yes or no.
Yeah.
It's like 5 times 5 equals 25. It's not, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
I hope that's right. But like, it's that they've got that surety in that if I do this correctly, it gets to that point. I tick these boxes, but whereas creativity is there's 17,000 different doors.
Absolutely.
And you're like, yeah, and now I'm here.
There's so much ambiguity in every single thing that you do.
Yeah, true.
Which can bring people a lot of anxiety, like, you know.
I think it does, yeah.
And I think you can see it in the way that people live their life as well. Like for me, like I've always done like a lot of house sitting, and I've traveled a lot, and that's what really revs me up. That's what gives me energy. And to other people, like I've got a bunch of friends who are like, I love watching what you do, but the way you live your life gives me so much anxiety.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They want to be settled, and they want the house, and they want to have the space.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'll have like a little base, like that's fine. But if I'm there for too long, I'm just like, I'm clawing out the walls. I'm like, get me out. I want to be in the world. Let me do something.
Yeah, that is true. Like I've done a fair bit of traveling myself, but it's now I'm sort of like the base is calling to be like, yeah, I like my own bed.
Oh no, yeah, definitely. I mean, I do like having my own bed, but it's still it kind of changes, doesn't it? I'm like, I still always want to like travel and go do things, but then even like the context of that could change, which had to change during lockdown. Like I was living in London.
Oh.
And I came back just to do a film contract, and like an important person's birthday.
Yep.
And I was supposed to go back and live my life. And then I was stuck in Melbourne. And then I was like, what the hell? I was supposed to go back. I was going to be running tours in India. Like I had all of like this stuff lined up, which was like, I'm going to be on the back of like creating a TV show to start creating this platform to talk about creativity and like being connected to your outer world, basically. Yeah. And then it just like... Oh,
and then COVID
just stuck at your parents' house in Melbourne.
Yeah,
and I was like,
sick.
What?
Yeah. You were in London.
Mm-hmm.
COVID happened. You living at your parents' house.
Yep. Back in my old room.
Nice. Yeah. How long were you in London for?
I was only there for a year.
Yeah, okay.
But, like, I was there indefinitely. Like, that was it. I'm like, I'm a Londoner.
Yeah.
I'm in it. Like, I had, like, a really great job. I was working 2 jobs, actually, because it's London and it costs money to breathe. But I was like, cool, I'm set. Like, I've got all these contracts that are rolling over. Life's looking pretty good. Like, I can see all the ways that I can now progress forward with all of the things I came here. Like, the reason, my intention for moving to London.
Yep. Which was?
Acting and creativity.
Yeah,
that's all I wanted. All, like, everything. I kind of got to this point in my life where I was just really unhappy with everything I was doing. It's not like I wasn't living a hard life or anything like that, but I was just feeling really unfulfilled. Yeah. And a lot of people just go through their life just being unfulfilled, but I'm not okay with that.
See, that's the creative side of you, though.
Yeah.
I think if you're, like, happy to sit back and just, this is life.
Yeah.
And not realising there are other opportunities. It's like, it blows my mind when someone tells me they've been in a job for 20 years.
Right? I guess so sad.
That is disgusting.
Isn't it?
And you should be ashamed of yourself. Because it's just like...
Get a new job.
Yeah, did you never... Like, they're like, I love my job. But I've never loved my job.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. A few people in my life who have loved their job.
Yeah.
And they're like, I go to work every day and I enjoy it. They're like, don't get me wrong, aspects suck, but I can't see myself doing anything other for money. And I'm like, that's crazy.
Which is so cool though.
Yeah, it's
like
awesome.
when you give up, like often when I've asked people about that, because I've investigated, I'm like, yeah, but how are you not bored?
Mm.
And a lot of the time I found that for a lot of people, those jobs are like ones where they're maybe like project based or,
so
you know, there's variety like within it. But then also if you can just, you know, like if I was writing and performing every single day, right? If you just put it, those are the words there. Like, what do? I'm a writer performer.
Yeah.
That's the same job for years. You know, but it's like within it, like lots of projects.
Yeah, a little tiny things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then like that's the thing that's giving you the fulfillment, because whatever it is that you're doing, your service to the world is working out for you. Like, yeah, I think that, you know, a lot of the times that with art, we think that it's not in service. Like it's very much a selfish act. I think that sometimes like we can feel like that when, especially
in Australia, when like we're very like, sit down, you know what I mean? Like if people are different, you do stand out to a certain degree. Like there's like a boundary, I guess. Like if you go a little bit too far over it, people are like, look at this tosser.
Exactly.
You know, sorry that they were trying to do a skit in the park and make a funny video or something, and people are
tall
just
poppy.
Yeah, 100%. It has to be in other countries, but we're pretty quick in Australia to be like, hey, settle down, mate.
Absolutely. I mean, I mean, you lived in London, you were doing comedy over there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but when I was there, and obviously I was speaking with like a lot of actors at the time as opposed to comedians, but I found that overall, like everyone was very collaborative.
Yeah, okay.
Which was so beautiful. Like, you know, like I've definitely got like a more collaborative network now, but before that I didn't really find a lot of collaborative people. It seemed, because it is so competitive, and fair enough, like a lot of the things that you're trying to get for, like you're trying to go for in Australia, like you're having to, there's not so many jobs in it, or like, you know, that person who gets that role is in it for 20 years. This comes up once in a lifetime. Like, but over there everyone was like I never got asked my age.
Okay.
And there wasn't really an ask of why. Like people were like, yeah, cool. Like, do you need help, or can I see it, or you know?
Okay.
And I was just like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And there was like instead of like here, it's like, oh yeah, why do you think you can do it?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It is very much a, like, it goes two ways, actually three ways in comedy. For me, it's like, oh, that's awesome. Second person just doesn't care.
Yeah.
And then the third is just like, like, I don't even know what that is. Like, it's like right, champ. Like, it's so strange. But they're not creative. All those people that say those things in a negative manner, it's like, oh, you how long have you done your job for? I've done it for 25 years. It's like, cool. Like, that's all you know.
Yeah.
And if you lost your job, you would lose your personality.
Yeah.
You'd probably lose your mind. You know what I mean? I've had like, I don't know, 12, 15 different jobs.
Yep.
Like, I was like, I can do more than you can do. You might get paid more than me, but I can adapt a lot quicker.
And do you know what? You also find that you can communicate and resonate with a lot more people, like from all demographics as well. It's like it's really interesting. I set a challenge for myself a few years ago before I was endeavoring upon some sort of project. I can't remember what it was, but I said to one of my friends, I was like, I'm gonna have every job I possibly can in the next like year. Give me a job context to do, and I'll go do it. And so I worked at like a drive-in for a bit because I wanted to be the projectionist.
Oh, yeah.
And then I just ended up like deep frying food and like delivering food to people that were like making out in cars.
Yeah.
So I was like, it's the 1960s, get a room. Like,
here's your dim sims.
I just think it's got, I mean, like sometimes when people are in a job for 25 years and they love it, they'll still be creative. Like that, like, you know, it's when hobbies come into it, you know,
yes.
So you don't have to make a career out of your hobby.
Yeah.
But then sometimes I think if people are a little bit uptight about it, sometimes a little bit of jealousy there.
For sure.
Or a bit of fear, like I want to do it, how are you doing? I'm mad at you that you can do it and I can't.
Yeah.
You know?
So even traveling. Like that's a firm, there's two people that like traveling is fantastic, and then there's why. Everything is in Australia. And you're like, it's not though.
It's not.
Like it's like you clearly haven't travelled, you know. And then those people later in life end up like their partner twists their arm to go to like Bali or something. They're like, it's fantastic. Cigarettes are $3. You know, that type of stuff. And you're like, yeah, that's just that's the tiniest little leap. Like there's more out there.
Bali's like a state of Australia.
Yeah,
like,
pretty much, yeah. It's very we've occupied it.
Yeah.
So you're acting in, trying to do acting in London. Did you get into movies, roles?
I wasn't wasn't there long enough to go and get into movies and that, but I was working in immersive theatre, which was something I never expected to happen and was one of the best things to have happened to me in my life. I was working for a company called Secret Cinema, which is where they take movies and then they make them real.
Oh.
So like these huge sets, which is a secret location, you have to sign like an NDA and everything. It was this whole like hectic life. It was amazing. And yeah, so it's a real. So we were doing Casino Royale, like James Bond.
Yeah.
And so we literally had the entire, like every single set pretty much that you saw in James Bond was in this giant warehouse in different rooms. And as a punter, you would buy a ticket.
Yep.
And then you go online to your ticket number and everything. You create your character, and then you come dressed as your character. And then we have actors, like everyone knows what's going on. There's all these different storylines that are happening, and we know every single storyline that's going on. And we will not jump out of character, and we'll never call you by your real name. You are full blown, just your character.
Really?
Yeah.
Bloody Westworld.
It was exactly like Westworld. Yeah, and it was fantastic. It was so overwhelming because I was part actor and part like functions manager sort of thing. So because obviously you're running an entire show, so you have to do all of it. And it was one of the most stressful but incredible experiences. Like I was like, I literally, I set the mission to become a paid actor. I'm like, I get to be paid to be acting.
Yeah.
And then that's the thing, like when I was supposed to be going back, I was like, cool, now I've got like my life set up, because I was doing a bunch of traveling, and I wasn't living in London straight away. I was living out in Kent, in Deal, and I was just writing and creating out there with a bunch of like incredible other artists.
Yeah.
And like stage managing festivals and stuff. But when I got like my life actually proper set up, got this job, I was like, all right, when I come back, now we're ready to rock and roll. And I'm like, okay, I live in Melbourne again.
Yeah. Yes, and now you're in my house.
Yeah.
It's funny how that stuff works.
It's so funny. I'm so like, I wouldn't have started stand-up comedy for probably a few more years if I hadn't have been stuck, you know?
Yeah. I suppose too, like, we're probably jumping a little bit, but writing is such a pivotal thing in stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
And like, you've already got the discipline of writing, whereas one of our like mutual friends, David Hughes, was a professional writer, a comedy writer, and then started doing stand-up, and now he's just phenomenal at it, and you're just like, those things works very well together. With one piece of the puzzle, and then you got the other one. Yeah.
Exactly.
So for yourself, obviously having the writing aspect, like you know how to write, like talking to people.
Exactly.
Whereas I'm just like, and like this happened, and she was like that, and I'm trying to tell a story, and if I haven't memorized my stuff right, it's just so horrible. I'm just like, what's wrong with me? But yeah, that's awesome about doing that. Not so great that COVID happened.
No, it's not. But at the same time, like, although it was like really, really horrible and crap, and everyone knows that, I tried to make it work for me. I was like, all right, I'm going to get something out of this, otherwise I'm going to set myself absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So I was really knuckled down on getting the work done, basically. And then, like, because it's like in between one of the lockdowns is when I started comedy, and then so we went into another lockdown. I was like, cool, I got this new skill, I got to learn how to write it. And, you know, like, because of writing so many different styles, like, you know, because writing, like, I wrote poetry every single day for 2 years just to learn how to write it properly. And then, you know, I was already writing press releases, I'd written articles, but they're all just gears, you know what I mean? Like, it's the same tools, changing gears. And I was like, cool, I've written comedy skits. Like, my friend and I used to have a comedy YouTube channel way back in the day. And I was just like, okay, now I've got to apply it into this very specific format of comedy writing. And I was like...
a reaction on the spot.
Exactly. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm in this lockdown. This is crap, because you need momentum in stand-up comedy. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I can focus on how to write it and try and figure out how, like, what my voice is. Even though I don't know what that is yet. That takes ages, but just like maybe like 0.5% closer.
That's why I always say, like, the stage time is the most important thing. And obviously if you're not getting it with COVID, you really can't, like, you have the best writing in the world, but until you can deliver it how you've got it in your brain, you're just like, oh yeah, because it's different to be like, and then I say this and they laugh, and then I say this and then they laugh harder. And then it happens, you're like, they didn't laugh at that bit. Fuck. And then they, fuck.
Exactly.
Like, it's such a...
It's that, and you don't, and then sometimes you don't even know as well because of, like, extra pauses. Like, an extra pause is really funny sometimes. An extra pause and a stare. Like, I did an episode on having anxiety a little while ago on my podcast, and I was saying, because I had an anxiety attack, for some reason I just went through a phase for no reason at all. It's not like I'd had a bomb that traumatized me. Like, I just... got the yips. Like, I just freaked out for like 5 gigs in a row.
Oh, okay.
While I was on stage. I was having a panic attack on stage. Like, I don't know if you've ever had a panic attack, but you think you're dying.
Nah.
Like, you can't breathe.
Yeah. So
I was trying to perform, but because I used to have anxiety attacks a lot when I was younger, and I got over that from scuba diving, because if you have a panic attack when you're 30 meters below the surface, you're going to die. So I had to, like, wrestle my brain into not panicking.
Okay. It's an interesting way to be like, if I have one of these episodes, I will die.
Exactly.
Don't have one.
Well, I didn't, at the time, I didn't even think of it like that. It's just like, I was like on a shipwreck and I started to feel like a panic attack coming. I was like, that was literally, this could not be a more worse time.
Yeah.
You cannot do that. So I kind of like had to like, was like really like wrestling inside thoughts, and then I had to calm myself down, right? So I haven't really had panic attacks in such a long time. And then when they kind of like veered up and I had a run of them in comedy, I was kind of like wrestling in my brain while I'm still performing. So luckily I knew my jokes, so I was just able to do it. So nobody knew that I was having a panic attack. But it meant that all of my pauses had changed.
Oh.
Because I couldn't breathe. Like, I was talking at the top here and I was like as I'm talking, but then it meant I had all these extra pauses and I was getting all these laughs, and I was like, I never would have known that bit was funny if I didn't have an anxiety attack on stage.
And that's the, like, you can write everything perfect, but it's the mannerisms,
That's it.
the showmanship on stage that you're like, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, stand up is it's a beast of its own.
It is.
Yeah. And there's no rhythm and rhyme.
None.
A joke that works 10 times in a row, and then the 11th time it bombs worse than it's ever bombed.
Exactly.
Ever, and you're like, what the fuck?
What the fuck?
It's a solid joke.
Yeah, and then you get mad at the crowd. How dare you? This is going really well. And then
these other past crowds loved it. Yeah, it's a very strange one.
Yeah.
So acting, obviously, you had to come back to Melbourne.
Yeah. I was doing a lot of online acting at the time, so I was just I did like a lot of stuff just to keep working on the craft. So you never stop studying when you're acting, and you'll find if you speak to any actor, they're always doing another training of some description. And so I was doing a lot of online training and acting at that point in time, just keep working on the craft and getting feedback and tweaks from people who are better at it than me. So I was still using the muscle, basically. Yeah.
So you've already, to get into stand-up, you sort of even had two of the puzzle pieces already with writing and acting.
Yeah.
I've seen a few people who do acting and then they do stand-up, and everyone's blown away by, like, holy shit, like, how are you so good at this from day one? And they're like, I've been doing, like, auditions for the last 5 years, and I have to put the animation into, like, 2 people staring at me, and I've got to act like it's really happening. And they're like, I was like, oh yeah, that would be very daunting. That's harder than stand-up when you've got, hopefully more than 2 people, unless you're doing stand-up in Melbourne sometimes. But you already had those 2 strings to your bow. Yeah,
it's one of those things where, because I find this, I'm sure you find the same as well when you're watching some newer comics. If there's someone who's never had stage time, the concept of being on a stage is really daunting.
Yes.
And I don't feel that. I might feel daunted if it's an important gig and there's people who I really respect in the crowd or someone I need to impress in order to get another job or something. Then the awareness of the space then starts to freak you out a little bit because you're like, am I using it correctly?
Yeah.
But on a whole, I'm like, okay, I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned whether or not my words and my performance gets the exact and single feedback that I need, which is a laugh, which is so wild about comedy. We want them to do one thing. So much pressure. But
or a clap.
Or a clap, that's also good. Or a well-timed gasp.
Yes,
that's also nice.
I'm more standing ovations is what I'm after.
That's nice.
It's never happened. So you think you get one, it's just someone getting a beer. Damn
it.
Yeah.
One standing ovation.
Yeah.
So I didn't have, I wasn't afraid of the stage, which then already meant that I was free to use the space. And when you see someone free to use the space, I find that you believe them more.
For sure.
Which is half the thing with stand-up. You need to believe whatever they're saying.
Yeah, I think it's so weird that as an audience member, you can sort of see that person doesn't have the trust in their own material.
Yes.
Which I do it all the time.
Yeah.
To be honest, but you can just see it. You're like, you're not. Your confidence isn't in that bit. Yeah, and that's why
it's true.
People always start with like, hey, this is new, and then they'll preface it like that, and then they'll go into the new stuff because it's sort of like, oh, you can cut the magician being like, this is the trick, now I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? So it's very strange. It is really strange.
I always think that comedy is one of the strangest crafts because it's very humbling, which I love. I love that.
Yeah.
It's really good. But at the same time, it's like, we say a lot of really cooked stuff and it's quite strong and, brutal in the way that it's performed and the stuff that you're saying, but it's like one of the most delicate art forms.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like if one thing is wrong in that room, the whole thing, you have to do heaps of work or the whole thing is screwed.
Yeah, well you could have a room of 100 people and one person's talking and you're like, how does that throw off an entire room? Exactly.
If the lighting is wrong, you're doing heaps of work. If there's a draft.
Yeah, seats.
Exact seats.
Yeah, and set up like round tables.
Yeah.
Every time I see that, I'm like, the fuck.
Stop doing the round tables, especially the tall ones. I don't know.
Yeah.
Cocktail tables.
But in saying that, we're not majority of the time not at comedy clubs. It's like a makeshift, you know. And it's like, yeah, we put some seats in here. And you're like, okay.
We have a chair. Do we have a stage? No.
Yeah,
Okay.
no. Yeah. It's lucky to get a stage half the time.
So, it's like I did one. It was like a rug on the floor.
Yeah,
I was like, this is so great.
Yeah, it is funny. And then the best thing I think about stand-up is the debrief after it.
Oh yeah.
When it's a shit gig, and you're like, that was rough, wasn't it? You're like, yeah. And then, you know, you just all of a sudden form a bond over like...
Trauma bonding.
Yeah. I assume that's how soldiers get so close to each other.
Yeah.
Like, remember when we killed that guy? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very... It's just a unique experience. I've always said to people, like, if you wanted to do stand-up comedy, you should just do it. I know it's easier said than done, but just get it out of your system.
Exactly. You don't know until you try it, and I think because anybody can do it, but it's like you got to be able to suck it up when it hurts, and it can hurt a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's what weeds people out, you know.
Yeah. I mean, like I haven't done very well coming back to Melbourne, and I'm just like, do I wanna do this? And then I'm like, yeah, I guess. But at the same time, when it's not, it's like anything. If it's not easy at the beginning, you're like, fuck this. I'm not good at this. It's just like, yeah, you're probably not until you try.
Until you try, yeah.
And keep going, push through, like, you know, speaking, podcasting, anything. It's pretty... I don't know, you think you're good at something,
yeah,
and then you try and do it for a specific reason or a goal, and then it doesn't work, and you're like, yeah, maybe I'm not good at that.
But then, you know, like, I always think you got to try and have the mindset of, like, you know the saying, you should never be the smartest person in the room?
Yeah.
You should also never be the most talented person in the room.
You
Sometimes,
I think
yes.
I would take both of those.
Yeah, but it gets boring. Like, you want to have times of it.
Yeah,
but in order to really progress and really keep feeling fulfilled and, like, you know, like, by design, we're always aiming to do something better. We're trying to get more, do more, be more. Like, if you're a cook, you want to make a better recipe.
Yeah.
If you're a writer, you want to write the next best book. If you're a musician, you want to top your last album. Like, you're always aiming for something. And if you're already at your top, you'll get bored. Then you get to pivot, which is fine. You can absolutely pivot. But if you're still loving the craft, you're always going to want to do more and be more.
Yeah.
So you have the moments, you're going to have the rewards of being the best and smartest person in the room. Be like, actually, this is worth doing. I am getting better. I can see where I was. Now I'm helping people. Like, okay, cool. But also now I'm going to keep moving and getting better.
Yeah, you do have to self-evaluate.
Yeah, really
the
important.
good and the bad.
Yes.
At all times.
At all times.
You know, you might be like, that gig sucked and I didn't get, you know, my jokes were going a success rate of like 40%, 50%, which for me that's a bomb. Like, you know, you want to be,
agreed.
You know, go like 85 plus,
yep.
You know, realistically. But you're like, but I did nail every word in that new bit, or my confidence didn't waver the entire time. So little things, I guess.
It
and
is.
then hopefully you can tie it all together with the next gig.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the only craft as well, but you have to practice everything in front of an audience of strangers.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's great too, though.
It's
automatic feedback. There's no other thing where you get automatic feedback.
None.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, like I had a semi-win like that last night because I had to do new material because I'm writing for my show.
Yeah.
Brand new, never been on stage before. Man, I was so stressed beforehand. I was like, I hate this. It means I have to probably most likely bomb. Like, I'm actively doing this. This is masochism.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why I'm hurting myself. But then, like, I got up and I did it. But it was the same thing. I was like, I found confidence in the uncomfortability of the lack of confidence in what the bit was.
Yes.
And I sort of did that. This is all new after I did the first one and it didn't do very well. I was like, And then I just became honest. And then from there, like, it was free. So for me, I was like, that's my win. And also, the jokes have legs. They're not perfect.
Yes.
By no means at all. But they've got legs.
yeah. There's something there.
There's something there. Yeah.
We were talking about automatic feedback. Obviously, you get that through stand-up. But you also do, like, art.
Yes.
So that's so subjective.
Hugely.
So how, like, I've never understood, like, so what sort of art do you do?
So I do a lot of cartooning now at the moment. I kind of, just in lockdown, I started exploring cartooning, really fell in love with it and never thought that I would. So I've done a lot more of that and I've been doing some like comedy cartoons and stuff that are going to be coming out on t-shirts soon actually.
Oh.
So I do that. I've also done like commission paintings, and I used to do a lot of life drawing. So I got commissioned to do life drawing when I was quite a bit younger, and then I've always just found a lot of interest in form.
What's life drawing?
Naked people.
Ah, yes, I knew that. I just wanted to ask. That seems like the weirdest thing.
It can be really weird. I've got a really good story about life drawing. So I even did life drawing when I was in high school, right?
Oh.
And
Did you do that?
Yeah, I did. We were never allowed to have a man.
As long as they're not other high schoolers, you know.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yes. But we had this one model, right? And I was always really aware of like looking after the model, right? And especially because I went to a pretty rough school, so I was like, we're doing these classes. How are these people getting booked to come in here and do this? This is like dangerous. But anyway, it's fine. And so this model came in. I was always really aware of sort of making them feel comfortable and welcome, because they are an object. Like your mission is to look at them as an object, draw their form. That's the end.
Yep.
But then like obviously there's a break in between. They put their robe on. Everyone has like a cup of tea and a biscuit. And so I would try and make sure that they feel like comfortable. Like, because I'm like, I imagine what it would be like to be them. I'm like, you're literally just up there with all your bits out. Surely when you put the robe on and grab a cup of tea and a biscuit, you feel a bit weird.
Yeah.
And like they don't. I know now as an adult they don't. Like that's their life. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I was always just a bit like, oh yeah, you know, how long, you know, to ask them and be like curious about their craft of posing. And then there was this one who really took to me, this woman, she really took to me having a conversation with her. And then it got awkward.
Oh.
So after the break, she gets onto the podium thing to pose, and then she was making eye contact with me the whole time. And she started doing these poses, I kid you not. She went on her back.
Yeah.
And she pulled her legs up. And she pointed her anus at me. And I was like, what? And I was like, this is so awkward. Anyway, there was like a small break, so I swapped easels with someone. I made up a story, and she turned back to me, and then full 3-eyed contact. You know what I mean? It was so awkward. Anyway, and then the class finished, and I rushed out of there before she.
You're not at high school, at least, are you?
I was in high school.
Ew! I wonder what that lady is up to these days.
I wonder. I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Yeah, she seems fun. A lady has just shown you her anus.
Her anus.
And you went home and had to tell your parents that?
Yeah, I did.
Or the court?
Could have done that.
Yeah.
No, I went home, I told my mum, but my mum's an artist as well, and so then she just kind of also found it funny.
Yeah, that's Betty. Butthole Betty.
Butthole Betty. I like it. Yeah, and I've just never forgotten it because it was really upsetting.
I think it would upset me too. Yeah, I like how she just followed you though, like a lazy Susan. Just
exactly.
Like, gonna get you.
Lazy Susan Brown Eye.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it was.
Oh, that's magnificent. So life drawing led you to keep doing obviously art.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah.
I did stop for a while, and this is, you know what, this is one of the other reasons why I ended up starting my podcast, and it's something that we talked about before off air. Like when you take a break from something, you have to come back to it, and you're not as good.
Yes.
I took a big break off art, and then the first painting I had to do when I came back after a few years, I was doing a mural on my friend's cafe wall, and like I freaked out.
Oh.
Yeah, it was so strange as well. Like I'd never experienced anything of it. I'm like, you're painting. Why are you stressing out so hardcore about it? But
I said, a butthole. Let's come back,
Betty. But yes, I did have a break in there, but then also that kind of like disdain for my work really intrigued me because I was just like, this is supposed to be fun. Like, what are you doing? So then, I kept doing it and kept going back to art and have been doing it for a few years. Yeah,
sweet. So I think we were talking off mic again about, I was talking about commissions.
Yes.
And I was trying to work out how they actually work.
So they work, I mean, it depends. Generally, you would find an artist whose work you like.
Yep.
And then if you want something customized, you would say, can I have a commission work from you? You would have a couple of meetings over what you want it to be. Mm-hmm. And then they would pay generally like 50% deposit and then pay at the end. Because a lot of the time as well, when you're doing artworks, you need to invest money into the materials.
Yeah.
So, depending on what medium you're using, like you might be needing to go and buy like the canvas, specific types of paint. One that I was doing, I needed a part of it. I had to do a stencil, so I had to go and buy like the stencil material, the sticky material to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so-
money out of your pocket that you've got to.
Exactly.
Yeah. And also too, if they like stooge you for money.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do you work out your fees? Is it just like I want to be paid X amount of dollars per hour, or is it how hard it's going to be, or is it like a?
You would do generally by by project.
Yeah. Okay.
By project. I haven't done that many of them, so like I'm sure like, you know, once you do it, like the same thing that I found with writing, like you can kind of refine your pricing as you go along and you figure out your own sort of system. But the way that like I've always priced them is just being like per project, including materials and the amount of time I think it's going to take.
Yeah, and then
in a best case scenario.
And then you give yourself an hourly figure.
Yeah.
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 That's fair.
But it took me a while to learn how to price that as well, because it's a strange thing to try and consider how to charge for the things that come out of your head.
It's the same as stand-up. Like,
Exactly.
we would do it for free.
All the time, in fact.
But someone's like, how much do you get paid? And you're like,
And then you do start getting paid, and then it's like, you got $50. You're like, how long did you do? 5 minutes. You're like, you got $10 for
Yeah, $10
No,
a day, yeah.
no, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
But
It's very. I just never knew how people. But it seems to be like sort of a standard for comedy clubs. Yeah, but painting.
Painting. I mean, and it
Very
is different.
different.
It's different
Yeah.
also on caliber of artists. I did work in a fine art gallery for a while as well,
Oh.
as like a curator and sales consultant, and it will also depend on the artist's experience as well. And then like there's like a level of fame that comes with it. Like fame will then put a value onto your paintings more.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What gets me though is like, and this is probably not someone who's not in the know. I see some stuff and it looks like I could genuinely do it. Like it's just paint, not even like, you know what I'm talking about. It's just something abstract.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is $3 million. And you're like, how? Why? Like fucking tell me how.
So I can understand that, and I did think, you know, it's easy, but then I thought actually I'm naive. It's probably not as easy as I think, but I reckon I can still do it. And I did like 2 abstracts smaller that were actually pretty good, and I was like, easy.
Yeah, give me $3 million.
Yeah, and I was like,
Yeah.
come on, give me some better quality paints. But then when you actually start getting into it and you start trying to do, like if you try and do an abstract, it's actually more difficult than trying to do an actual piece of work where you're painting, you know, you're trying to paint an apple or do something like that, because it becomes less about like the form and the topic of the painting and more about like the weight and the juxtaposition and the contrast. So then you're just playing with something completely different.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
And also you can like spin a tail and be like, that's the impurity of man. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yes.
It's like an apple core, like on the side of a bin or something. You're like, I see it. It is like, yeah, maybe that's just me. It always seems like sort of that world sometimes a little bit like you seen the ad for I don't know, whatever TV company it is, and the 2 art connoisseurs are talking about the painting on the wall, but it's actually one of those TVs when you turn it off it turns into a painting.
Yes.
And that's how I see those people.
I mean, some of them for sure.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's the different reasons of why you consume art. Some people consume art and they will literally purchase art just for the fact that it's an investment piece. So
yes.
it's
that's
more
the
like
next level of rich. It
next
goes
level rich.
House, super duper great car,
Jet skis.
jet ski, chucking a caravan, boat, yacht, and then art. Because you can do everything with that stuff, and art is literally on your wall, and you can't do anything with it.
Well, it's like having a fine wine. Like the older it gets, the more value it gets. Especially, now this is strange, an artist who is getting old, and they are quite good in the art scene. Like their work is selling for like maybe tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then because now they're aging and they're a little bit unwell, and they're like, oh, you're on the cusp. Bump up the price because now the availability of your artwork is becoming less possible.
Yes, fine art, yeah.
And we used to have an artist who quite a bit older, and then I've never seen it before in my life, but he was like starting to get really stressed about the fact that he was getting older, and he was watching people start to scramble over his works, and he's like, whoa, he's like, this
Really?
is really strange. I'm like, I can't imagine that life where people are like, you know, it's like having a bunch of kids like waiting for you to die. Like, it's just strange. You know what I mean?
That scenario.
It's
yeah.
But I was like, I'd never thought about it before, that like, obviously, you know, you hear about like artists who have passed away and their works become worth millions of dollars because like, what an amazing talent, and we no longer can get the work from them.
Yes, yeah.
But then to what someone who is just like, there's nothing wrong with him, he's just getting older, so now his work's going up in value because he was getting older. And I'm sure there's like more like specific details than that, but like on a baseline, this is what this situation was that we're talking about. And I was just like, how weird. And I'm like, are you nervous? He's like, yeah, because I feel funny. And I'm like, yeah, that's an odd feeling.
Yeah, that is very, very strange.
Really strange.
Yeah.
But that's, yeah, I don't know. It's funny. And then all art obviously is subjective.
Yes.
All the time. And then that would mean that obviously all of your works are subjective. Like, I've been to a lot of different galleries of different genres.
Yeah.
You know, and then some of them you have a lot of fun. Some of them feel like they're too much for the art collector and less for the, you know, the causality of the artwork, you know?
Yep.
And thinking about why the person painted it. And I love standing in front of a painting that I hate. I love it. You know what I mean?
Look at this piece of shit.
I hate you so much. Why do I hate you? What is it? What is it? Why do I hate you?
How much is it?
Yeah.
It's just one of those ones, I guess. It's always been there's a fucking monkey in some other country that's literally, they're like giving it a paintbrush and they're like, let's see if this monkey can paint. And then it does, and they're like, we're selling this for $1 billion.
Whoa, yeah.
Selling this for $1 billion, or an elephant, or something, like some animal that can hold on a brush, and we're like, they're not supposed to do this. Yeah, robots can paint, I guess.
They can. It's too perfect though.
Yeah, true. Yeah, they couldn't do abstract.
They can't do abstract.
That's the market, yeah.
There you go, robot.
That's been the whole podcast, trying to work out what they can't do. Yeah, abstract painting. Or maybe you just get a broken one.
Oh, yeah.
Just got like a dinky arm, and it's just, looks a bit dodgy. Yeah, it's interesting. I was just trying to think if I had any other questions, but like, how do you find your sort of inspiration, muse and stuff like that for when you're doing your own art at home?
I suppose it changes. I think it depends on the reason why I'm wanting to create something. If I just want to draw to relax, because I'm very much like, I'm always like about efficiency and like being effective with my time and stuff. So then I find sometimes I can be a little bit like, oh, well, what am I going to do? Like, what's the point of drawing? I have to remind myself to play.
Yes.
And so then if I have to really start to think about it, I'm like, okay, cool. And then I will literally just start off with something that's in front of me. And I might try and choose something that's quite boring.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, I'm going to try and make you interesting. Like, what is it that's interesting about you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then so like looking at the glass of water that's on the table, I'm like, there's a lot of like the reflection of the window and the lights into the glass is making a pattern. And then how do you draw that? And like obviously water is like, it's water, but then it's obviously got its own elements to it. Like there's the what's it called? It's like the water resistant element in the bit. I've forgotten the word of it. Anyway, but there's the point at the top of the water where there's that little gap.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's like the top of the water, but it's like a film that sits between the world and under the water, you know? And it's how do you draw that? Like, you know, there's just try and take something boring and make it fun.
I suppose with art and stuff like that, it is repetition.
It is definitely repetition.
Yeah, like you keep doing it and then you get good at drawing hands.
It's the same thing as any craft. Comedy is exactly the same way. And then through that, you can also find your own style.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so like I used to always like look to artists' work who I really liked. I'm like, I'm not as good as them. I want to draw like that. Like my mum, fantastic artist. I was like, I want to draw like her. But I'm like, I don't have her hands. I don't have her life. I'm never going to draw like that. Also, she's left-handed. That's different.
Yeah. Just how you see in the world as well, I guess.
Exactly. And so then like through being free, which is how I started doing the cartooning, because I thought I'm really bad at cartoon. I don't want to do it. But then I started to sort of look at how I was cartooning, and I was like, if this is naturally how I draw, like the same way that you have your handwriting, how can I use that to sort of express its own self?
Yeah, okay, so you make up like your own style and stuff like that.
Yeah, which just comes again from repetition. Seeking inspiration, of course, like you need to know, you know, I was trying to explore how to draw hands, so I watched a video on how to draw hands better, but then I was applying it to cartooning, so then it was like, there was like a freedom within it.
Yeah, okay.
And then that freedom was helping develop a style, you know?
Yeah, I suppose that with like cartoons and stuff, there's no like you can draw someone with giant hands. You know what I mean? If you're drawing a human, usually like with a life, what was it?
Life drawing.
Life drawings, it's going to be like we've got to get that butthole right.
Exactly.
Because it's the centre of
perfect tone shading. Don't rub it too much.
Just putting your picture next to it, making sure. Yeah, that's pretty good, Betty. I'll sign this one for you. You're aging. I think that's pretty much us. We're pretty good to finish up. Did you want to do some plugs?
Yeah, just go listen to my podcast.
Yep.
And
you're weird.
But and follow. Just follow my socials. That's probably better.
And what are they?
Hannah, HONNAH _ Sainty, SAINTY. That's it.
Sweet. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Thank you.
I like it.
Hopefully get you on another time. I'm literally just looking at that camera with its light flashing, telling me it's going to die in a second.
It's perfect timing.
It is, yeah.
All is well in the world.
That's it. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 54. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you some other time. Thank you.
Thank you.